principles because they all interlock together. And so what are we talking about? We're talking about the last portion of the chapter 6 from the textbook, The Lessons of Love. And today, specifically, we will be going over the second lesson, to have peace, teach peace, to learn it. We were just talking about that. You're both learning and teaching at the same time. Today, we'll talk about how that impacts your own inner peace and your ability to live in peace. Before we do that, however, a few things in review, and I'll read these because I think it's just easier. It will talk again, and it has talked in the previous section about the fundamental change. So we want to make sure that everyone, that term is clear. And what it says is that everyone identifies himself with his thought system, and every thought, at the center of every thought system is what you believe you are. So think of it as a circle with lots of ideas in it. And at the very center of it is what you believe you are. And in this respect, the ego and the Holy Spirit are in fundamental disagreement about what you believe you are. That's vital. So we're talking about changing your mind about what you think you are in a fundamental way. Why? Because the Course says, in order for lasting change is fundamental. Only fundamental change will last forever. And so we will refer to that as thought reversal, about shifting from one body of thoughts and beliefs into another body of thoughts and belief. You can think of it like a spiritual journey, a learning journey. And how do we begin? We begin with your will, your willingness to do so. We'll refer to it as changing your motivation from listening to the ego, changing that to one of listening to the Holy Spirit. And that will, changing your will, produces fundamental change. The contrast with that, or the opposing factor, is where you're half willing or partially willing. You're a little willing, but not completely willing. And this introduces difficulties, opposition. But the Course reminds us that anything that you will wholly will, totally will, can never be difficult, because your will is so powerful. So, to wrap up this little series here, there are steps in this journey of reversing your thought system. We need to begin with the first step. And we have read that the ego's entire worldview is premised that there's a great lack of love, that there really is not any love to be found. And therefore, it teaches that your soul is empty, devoid of love, and that you, in order to find love, must go out there outward and seek it because you don't have it. That's the ego's teaching. Therefore, and this outward seeking for the love that you don't have becomes an addiction for the ego. It's referred to as the getting concept, and it drives people in an endless quest for finding out there what will make them happy. So we refer to that as the getting concept. And the first step in this journey is to undo your belief that the getting concept is effective, is real, is true, is worthy of your attention and your time. So the Holy Spirit will introduce the exact opposite of the getting concept, which is the first lesson. To have, give all to all. For in other words, instead of being devoid, assuming you are devoid of all the gifts of God, it says, in order to make them a part of you, become a giver of the gifts of God to others. And that's how you will know and be confident that you have them. This is all summary of what was gone over in section 6.5a. Few more random ideas that reinforce what we just said. And that is that the undoing of the getting concept is the first step in the Holy Spirit's plan to bring you home. The ego believes it's insane. The ego believes that all the things that the Holy Spirit teaches are insane, and therefore will resist your adopting to the first lesson, to have, give all to all. Two very different points of view. However, what we learn in the course is it's not the Holy Spirit's lesson that is insane. It's what is insane is the conflict with your own spirit. Your own heart and soul knows what it is. And conflicting teachings with your heart and soul, that's what's insane. And that's what the ego teaches. Warning, this brings us to one of the most apparent and obvious conflicts, is to try to live with both the Holy Spirit's teachings and the ego's teachings, is to live, and the ego would invite you to do this, is to accept inner conflict as natural. The Course in Miracles teaches inner conflict is not natural. And the way out of this inner conflict is clearly to choose one thought system and entirely relinquish the other thought system. And that brings us to about where we will be reading today. Heidi, you had a comment?
Yes, I actually have a situation where I'm accepting both the ego and the Holy Spirit's message, and conflict is definitely happening. I don't know how to make it stop.
Yeah.
How do you stop it so there won't be conflict?
So Heidi, you're not alone in those experiences, and you very much need to guard we need what we call guardrails or boundaries, so that when your mind begins, like the very moment your mind begins drifting into an ego narrative, an ego's way of looking at your life, you need to, the yellow light should start flashing and saying, this cannot make me happy. And if you pay attention the way you feel, you will know that you're getting into that territory again. And so everyone must learn this, to stay in your lane of the Holy Spirit. We call it guard your thoughts. Don't allow your mind to wander out of your lane into the ego's narrative, especially the one about our past, which is a very favorite tool of the ego, is to just replay the narrative of your past and wind you into its worldview that way. So mind training is necessary, Heidi. It tells us at the introduction of the workbook lessons that an untrained mind can accomplish nothing. And so we use the workbook lessons as a manual for training our mind to attune to the ego and reject I'm sorry. We use the workbook lessons as a manual to attune to the Holy Spirit and reject the ego.
Thank you.
Marav?
Yeah, what I just wanted to share real quick is not so much different than what you said. You actually said everything I wanted to say, but it's pretty much, for me, because it was this constant battle. I think that what helped me make peace with things more is that I started to realize that my awareness of thinking from my ego versus my soul,
Yes.
I knew I'm on the right path.
Yes.
So it wasn't so much of what I'm achieving or getting. And of course, very important, paying attention to how I feel and what's around me. It's pretty much showing me if I'm on the right path. But I think just that alone, this awareness of where I'm thinking from, because we know when we think from our ego and start to observe my thoughts from the outside, help me get there. Because then I use the tools that help me to kind of let go or get rid of those thoughts. So it's a process, of course, but it's the awareness that was helping me a lot.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you. Richard?
Hi, guys. Thank you for calling on me. What I'm seeing with me, I've got to fall out of love with myself in order to fall in love with whatever is not only inside me. There's got to be a congruency, both inner and outer. And that's my challenge. One thing for me, I've been deeply programmed, and it has nothing to do with my age. It has to do with that's included. But the initial subconscious is really coming. It's showing its head. In other words, there's something I had read, and it talked about it's not the thought, it's sponsoring thought, the thought before the thought.
Right.
And many times I'm acting unconsciously based on old conditioning.
Right.
And to break that, to share myself with others, to be able to look at that, and it's not the change for me, it's the resistance to change.
Right. Right.
Where I'm at that point, that juncture, and it's leading me now to the sense of isolation, and I know I'll work through it. But what I was thinking originally, what the course was going to give me was stoic love. I'm going to stand there and be strong. It's not about that at all. That's my ego. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I wanted to give an update.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Richard. So with that, we're going to start reading from section B. Again, if you were in the previous session, some of this first 3 paragraphs will be review, and then we'll get into the new material. Julie, you're muted.
The first step in the reversal or undoing process is the undoing of the getting concept. Accordingly, the Holy Spirit's first lesson was to have, give all to all. I said that this is apt to increase conflict temporarily, and we can clarify this still further now. At this point, the equality of having and being is not yet perceived. Until it is, having appears to be the opposite of giving. Therefore, the first lesson seems to contain a contradiction, since it is being learned by a conflicted mind. This means conflicting motivation, and so the lesson cannot be learned consistently as yet. Further, the mind of the learner projects its own conflict and thus does not perceive consistency in the mind of others, making him suspicious of their motivation. This is the real reason why, in many respects, the first lesson is the hardest to learn. Still strongly aware of the ego in yourself and responding primarily to the ego in others, you are being taught to react to both as if what you do believe is not true.
Mhm. Two different thought systems, entirely different in their assumptions. You may find it helpful to think of it as two different rooms in your mind. In one room, you walk in there and there's the ego narrative blaring about guilt, about the past, about judgments, about fear, about attack. To hang out in that room, you cannot find love and happiness and forgiveness in that room. In the other room is the whole, call it the room of the Holy Spirit. These are different parts of your own mind. There is a message of innocence, of new perception, of kindness, of healing, of love. Did I say forgiveness? And so when your mind will wander from one room to the next without you necessarily recognizing you have shifted from one state of awareness to the next, and the two rooms are in dire conflict. And so you will experience that as inner conflict as you shift from one set of awareness to another. And that conflict is what we need to heal from. That conflict will bring about conflicting motivation. And if you are meaning that you're not necessarily desirous of learning the course, and so the lessons cannot be learned consistently when you're in conflict. And that to build on that, you will then project your own inner conflict outward and see other people as being conflicted rather than seeing them with charity and with love. You will project your conflict outward and view them in that light. And so for all these reasons, the first lesson can be the hardest to learn. And so, no, this is why we're emphasizing it here. This is why we're reviewing it. We want to make sure that you anchor your understanding of these matters. Not that you would master the lesson today or this week, but at least from an introductory understanding, you grasp the significance and the meaning of what's entailed here. Let's go on.
There we go. The first step in the
I'm sorry, we might have had a time delay there. We're in to upside down as always.
Gotcha. Upside down as always, the ego perceives the first lesson as insane. In fact, this is its only alternative, since the other possibility, which would be much less acceptable to it, would obviously be that it is insane. The ego's judgment, here as always, is predetermined by what it is. The fundamental change will still occur with the change of mind in the thinker. Meanwhile, the increasing clarity of the Holy Spirit's voice makes it impossible for the learner not to listen. For a time, then, he is receiving conflicting messages and accepting both.
So this characterizes what I would, perhaps your first year in practicing Course in Miracles, you become increasingly aware of the Holy Spirit's voice. To use Marav's term, you become aware of your own soul and what it's communicating to you. At the same time, you're still aware of your ego's message. And so for a time, you're receiving conflicting messages from your ego and from your higher self. And it can be very confusing because you have not yet learned how to navigate that territory. And so what we will teach you in this program is to learn to reject the ego's messages and then turn with open arms and open heart to the Holy Spirit to accept the Holy Spirit's message. It's a distinction that you must learn. So pay attention as thoughts travel over your consciousness. Recognize their character. If you pay attention, you can tell the difference between dark thoughts and light thoughts. You know the difference already. You might not have bothered to attend to what was going on. And that's the part of where mind training comes in. You take note of the thoughts that are passing over your mind, and you distinguish between those which are forgiving and those which are guilt-laden. One more paragraph here before we get into the new material.
The way out of conflict between two opposing thought systems is clearly to choose one and relinquish the other. If you identify with your thought system and you cannot escape this, and if you accept two thought systems which are in complete disagreement, peace of mind is impossible. If you teach both, which you will surely do as long as you accept both, you are teaching conflict and learning it. Yet you do want peace, or you would not have called upon the voice for peace to help you. Its lesson is not insane. The conflict is.
Mm-hmm. So very plainly, the goal of this course is to help you experience inner peace in an enduring way, not just for a moment, but a lasting peace. That is the goal of this course. If you bring your mind to that point, all that is in ahead of you spiritually will happen automatically once your mind has reached a state of inner peace again. But there are barriers that we must relinquish before we can get to that point. And the course will teach us that if you identify with two different thought systems and accept both of them, two thought systems that are in complete disagreement, in that state, peace of mind is not possible. To have two different thought systems that are in complete disagreement, and for you to buy into, use another word, to give your faith to two different thought systems at the same time, peace is impossible. And so therefore we need a lesson plan. We need a curriculum that will help us in this journey so that it doesn't take so long for us to make so many mistakes, but that we can accelerate our learning. And that brings us to where we will pick up the new material. You have already chosen the path of peace. Now the question is, what are the means to apply to your daily life so that you can implement that in practice on a daily basis? Before we go on, Susie, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to share that, the conflict, although annoying and irritating and not welcome, is just something that happens, especially in the beginning, and not only in the beginning, because the ego just doesn't really ever go away. It can just be tempered, the best that we can. And I think Lynn put in that it's just a gentle program. And the greatest thing about the course is I can just choose again. I can continually just choose again. And all these conflicts that I have, I know now what I really want, that lesson of beyond all else. I want to see differently. Beyond all else, I want the peace of God. It's just not always, it's different. I'm not going to say it's not simple. It's just really different, but I just choose to keep trying again and again and again and again, and not beat myself up for having the conflict in my mind. That's all.
Thank you for emphasizing that. We will address this actually a number of times, that as you're moving from one room into another, there is a tendency to treat yourself the way the ego would treat you. That's the whole point of this course, is identifying mistakenly with the ego. And the ego, when it sees you having struggles, is cruel. It's harsh. And there's a tendency to view yourself in that dark, cold way. And so we need to learn, as people have been saying on the chat, to be gentle and loving with ourselves, just to realize that I made an error, but now I'm choosing again to be free, and not in any way assume a punishing attitude towards ourselves. It can be learned. Okay, so that completes the review that we did. We're moving into new material now.
There can be no conflict between sanity and insanity. Only one is true, and therefore only one is real. The ego tries to persuade you that it is up to you to decide which voice is true. But the Holy Spirit teaches you that the truth was created by God, and your decision cannot change it. As you begin to realize the quiet power of the Holy Spirit's voice and its perfect consistency, it must dawn on your mind that you were trying to undo a decision that was irrevocably made for you. That is why I suggested before that you remind yourself to allow the Holy Spirit to decide for God for you. You are not asked to make insane decisions, although you can think you are. It must, however, be insane to believe that it is up to you to decide what God's creations are. The Holy Spirit perceives the conflict exactly as it is. Therefore, his second lesson is to have peace, teach peace, to learn it.
Mm-hmm. So as you begin this journey where you depart, you take the first steps in departing from the ego's thought system. The ego will make a lot of noise. And one of the things it will tell you is that it's up to you to decide what is true. You be the judge of what is true. After all, that's your prerogative. That's your right to be the judge. Notice the words there. You be the judge of what is true. And so that message will come through. And what the Course says, it would be insane to believe that it's up to you to decide what is true about God's creation. It would be insane to appoint yourself to be the judge of what is true about God's creation. So and A Course in Miracles does this all the time. It will highlight for you the types of propaganda of the ego, and then we'll show you logically how silly such an idea is, how it could never be true. So, what are we to do as we leave the thought system of the ego? It gets very loud in its messaging to try to get you to come back. And that period can be full of internal turmoil because you can, not yet being fully identified with the Holy Spirit, get lost in the ego's messaging. And so what we do is we lean on the Holy Spirit and we say, Holy Spirit, you decide for me what is true. I don't want to be the judge of what is true. Holy Spirit, you decide for me. And to put this in practical terms, Holy Spirit, tell my soul what is true, and I will listen to the guidance of my soul. And therefore, I do not need to be a judge. I'm merely listening to my own soul speak to me. And so you're not asked to make these kinds of judgments about the truth, but you are asked to, this is the second lesson of the Holy Spirit, is to affirm what it is you want for yourself. This is a positive affirmation. Doesn't mean you're there yet, but it's an affirmation of your choice for peace. To have peace, I must teach peace to learn it. Now, these words, these particular arrangements of words in the beginning may not mean a lot to you. We could say this many ways. And we will re-express this second lesson using other words. But for now, for you to experience peace, you must practice it in your life. We call it teach it. You must be willing to accept the idea that you are a member of the peaceful sonship, that you are in peace, and therefore live your life according to the laws of peace. And as you do that, you will be teaching it to others. And here's the miracle of it. As you see yourself teaching it, you will know it's true of you. In other words, until you exhibit it in your own life, we'll call it a theory. Maybe it's an intellectual idea in your mind. It's a really beautiful idea, but the experience of sharing your peace with someone else is a direct experience that you can have. And in doing that, you know that it's true. You see it in your own life. You become confident in your choice for inner peace. we will have much more to say about this. This is just the introduction to the idea. Matter of fact, we'll, by the time we get to chapter 31, we'll still be talking about this lesson, which is learn to live your life according to the laws of peace, and become a practitioner of peace. And so doing, your entire inner world unites around this purpose, and then it draws in your outer world. The way you interact with the world at large becomes an extension of your inner world. All right, this is still a preliminary step.
This is still a preliminary step, since having and being are still not equated. It is, however, more advanced than the first step, which is really only the beginning of the thought reversal. The second step is a positive affirmation of what you want. This then is a step in the direction out of conflict, since it means that alternatives have been considered, and one has been chosen as more desirable. Nevertheless, the term more desirable still implies that the desirable has degrees. Therefore, although this step is essential for the ultimate decision, it is clearly not the final one. Lack of order of difficulty in miracles has not yet been accepted, because nothing is difficult that is wholly desired. To desire wholly is to create, and creating cannot be difficult if God himself created you as a creator.
Mhm. So in this paragraph here and in many other places in the course, we will refer frequently to where you are in your own journey right now, the step you're taking now, and we will also refer to the ultimate state, the final step, the destination for which all this is done. And the ego would have you believe that it is a long and impossible journey from where you are now until the final state. It would have you believe that there are hypothetically many lifetimes needed for you to reach the ultimate state, the final step. This program is unique in that it's intended to collapse the time you need to make that journey, so that you excel. It's a celestial speed up. You accelerate your progress through that, not because of your abilities, but because the Holy Spirit knows how to work within the framework that we give her, and she knows how. She sees the end from the beginning, and so she each day can provide for you the exact message, the exact lesson that you need to learn to make progress in that day. So we'll refer to right now, this is only the second step we're referring to here, and we're not anywhere near the final step. Nevertheless, what is important is that we be entirely willing to keep stepping forward. Give you a preview here. The ego would have you take 2 steps and stop and become content to just remain at the second step and go no further. That's the ego's goal, to delay your moving on beyond the second step. Our Holy Spirit guidance is keep stepping forward, each day a step forward. One small step each day going forward. and your willingness to take those steps on a daily basis is what determines your progress. And so here's where there's a language thing, and Susie started to refer to it indirectly. This course is not difficult, but it is different than anything that you've undertaken before. If you're only half willing, it is not easy, because that means you're half invested in one plan and half invested in the Holy Spirit's plan. That makes it not easy. But if you are wholly willing, then that means you've given the Holy Spirit permission to move you along. And if you are wholly willing, this program is not difficult. It cannot be difficult, because you have called upon the one thing that is the gift from heaven to you to bring you back home to peace. Susie?
You know, a good example of this for me is, you know, when I used to be at the market, and if I was at the checkout counter or something, and, you know, the checkout woman or man or whatever was being a certain way as determined by my ego's definition. For me, I mean, this is just to have peace. I have to teach peace to learn it. Like, my ego doesn't want me to be kind, but the Holy Spirit wants me to be kind. And in order for me to feel peaceful, I have to be peaceful and kind and show compassion and charity to the person. I have no idea what that person's going through. And when I teach that peace, then I have a feeling of peace, and then I'm learning it because I'm teaching it. And then that woman or man or whoever that might be might say, oh yeah, wow, I could be that way too. So it really all is, for me, the pebble in the pond too, this whole thing. So I don't know, it's the antithesis of the way my ego wants me to be, and therein lies the conflict. But I want peace, and I have to teach it in order to learn it. So there's so many examples like that, but that just comes to me.
Yeah.
In any way, just be kind, and then I have peace, and then I teach it.
Lovely. Thank you. Richard, you had your hand up?
Yeah, hi. It's good, and I'm relating to everything. And it's like I'm on the precipice of change. It's the adjustment, the continuity. I don't think I could do that just solely without any help. I'm depending on you guys more for spiritual growth than I ever had with anyone or anything else in my life.
Nice.
This is the work here for me, that I'm taking my show out on the road. And I'm saying goodbye to old things, part of my identity, something that had been inculcated in me ever since I was a child. And I feel like I'm disloyal. It's just feeling, but the identification to the past is still there.
Right.
So that's again where I'm at.
Great. No, yeah, I thank you for that expression. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Sandra, you had your hand up?
Yeah, for me to teach only peace, there's a prerequisite, which is everything is always working out for me. So when I embody and embrace that thought, then I'm peaceful. When I think somehow things can not be for my highest and best, then I'm judging and assessing and trying to get something. But when I know that my highest and best is being served at all times, I can be peaceful. I'm complete.
Yes, very good. And there's a corollary to this, which is to accept things as they are, and not to accept and not be in resistance to situations that show up in life. They may not have been things that you ordinarily would welcome, but when they happen, I accept them as they are so that I might be at peace. And the ego has the opposite agenda. Every situation comes along, it wants to judge it by its own terms and reject situations that could be better, could be different. So learning this acceptance is one of the arts in A Course in Miracles. There's a science and there's an art. And it's one of the arts of learning to accept what shows up in your life and see it as an opportunity to grow and learn. And when you do that, you, as Sandra said, you can be at peace because you have oriented your own reactions to the situation so that you might be at peace. All right, we have one more reading tonight and then a summary.
The second step then is still perceptual, although it is a giant step toward the unified perception that reflects God's knowing. As you take this step and hold this direction, you will be pushing toward the center of your thought system, where the fundamental change will occur. At the second step, progress is intermittent, but the second step is easier than the first because it follows. Realizing that it must follow a demonstration of a growing awareness that the Holy Spirit will lead you on.
So those of you that were here at the beginning, you might quiz yourself as you push towards the center of your thought system where the fundamental change will occur. Understand what that fundamental change is. It's what you believe about yourself, the way you define yourself in this reality, in creation. There is more steps to go. This is only the second step, and progress is not in the idealized, that we've encountered this many times before. In the idealized view, this journey would be one of constant progress forward, ever moving higher and higher and more towards peace. But in practice, progress is intermittent. And there are often 3 steps forward, 2 steps backward. But that's still a step forward. 3 minus 2 is still 1 step forward. There's a learning even in those situations that we may not accept. There's still resistance. There is still opportunity to learn from them. We get to see our ego acting up, and we become, actually, we judge that that's not what I want for myself going forward. I want to be free of that. So it can be uncomfortable noticing your ego flare up, but in so doing, you are making a choice to not continue repeating that behavior, those thoughts, those feelings, not to remain stuck in that narrative. So I'm going to review a few things here in a second. Susie, a comment?
Yeah, just really quickly, John, I just love when you said that, when our ego acts up. And, I think the best thing to do for us is to not get agitated and to irritated. And David and I sometimes laugh at each other and say, oh, there it goes again. There's just that damn ego. And it's, we forgot to laugh. So it's just, I don't have to take it that seriously anymore, I can just laugh at it. There it is. Oh, well, see ya, anyway, I can't forget to laugh at it and
True.
not get so upset at it.
Yes.
Makes me more peaceful.
Yeah. And I don't mean to single out Heidi here, but Heidi, when you can laugh at your ego flaring up, when you can have a good, genuine laugh there, then you're really beginning to feel freedom. It means I made a mistake. It was the ego that was behind the thought behind that mistake, but I'm not fooled. I see it, and I'm not enmeshed in all that chaos. I'm free. Ha ha ha. So it is a wonderful indicator of a newfound freedom. Noel?
You answered part of what I've been thinking about, which is this. I tend to see the ego as an entity, a palpable thing. And
Yes.
I don't like it. It's like a demon of some kind. And that feels like it's making it more real than it is. I would like to perceive it as more ephemeral, maybe more illusory, less powerful.
Yes.
And the laughing at it, and as Susie said, oh, there goes the little bum again, helps.
Yes. Yeah, I want to elaborate. That's a really good point, Noel. Thank you for bringing that up. I want to just expand on it a little bit because this is easily confused. People can confuse the ego and think of it as an entity, a being, a demon, a personality, label it however you want, but it seems to be its own thing. In the Course teaches the ego is a body of beliefs. It's a teaching system. It's badly mistaken teaching system that relies on fear and separation and guilt and you remaining the judge of all those matters. But once you withdraw yourself from that teaching system, there's nothing there because you have withdrawn from it. In fact, this is part of what will make you laugh. You realize, wow, a year ago, those situations used to bother me all day long. And now I don't even give it a second thought. It's like it doesn't exist. And it's true that as you change your mind, your habits of thought and reactions will change. And the old pattern does not exist anymore. It was never anything more than a poor set of habits of how you react to situations. I said I wanted to do a little bit of review. I hope this will clarify. We're just reframing what was said only, but we're reframing it. You can view it as a problem that gets resolved. One, the problem is the ego wants you to accept two opposing messages, which will result in inner conflict. It wants to blur the distinction between what is important in life and in love. It wants to blur the distinction between that and the things that don't matter at all. Furthermore, the ego wants to persuade you that you should be the voice of truth. You should be the judge of what is true. And then you would have the power. So that's the problem, that messaging system. Now, we call it the error. In the course's language, we would refer to it as an error, a mistake. And so we want to remove that error. And the way out of this conflict between these two thought systems is to clearly embrace one while letting the other go. And people have used the metaphor of the trapeze artist. Usually it would be like a girl, she lets go of one trapeze and maybe spins in the air and reaches her arm out and allows herself to be caught by the guy on the other trapeze. It takes courage, right? You let go of the thing that it seems to be your safety point and trust that you'll be caught in the arms of your partner, the Holy Spirit in this case. So that's what we're being asked to do, is not to try to stay rooted in both thought systems, but completely let go of the ego's thought system. And you must learn to trust the Holy Spirit to catch you. Matter of fact, lack of trust is the reason why people don't let go of the ego's thought system, because they're worried about what will happen to them if they do let go of the old thought system that they had. Richard spoke about this. He described it very well about being on the precipice of ready to make this leap, but there's and with all of us a hesitation of what's going to happen to me if I relinquish my past identity. Well, the Holy Spirit's there to catch you. This is where we talk about receiving the answer. And part of it is trusting the Holy Spirit to have the complete picture of your spiritual journey. She has seen the end from the beginning and knows. She's done this with billions of people already. She knows what the journey looks like. And so the prayer of trust is, Holy Spirit, decide for me. I let your guidance become I follow the guidance. It is my will to do your will. So the Holy Spirit teaches you what to choose and will eventually free you from having to make any choices. That's the ultimate state, but and we're not there yet in our reading, but for now, we need to learn how to choose and let the Holy Spirit choose for us, and then she will teach us how to do that. It's a decision that you have already made. It's a decision to be at peace, to let go of the thought system that teaches you fear and guilt. And when you accept the Holy Spirit's decision as yours, it liberates you. This is why we laugh, Heidi. It liberates you from the prison cell of the ego, and you become free. And it feels good. And it's like, who would ever want to go back into the prison cell? And in fact, it liberates you in a way that joins you with the plan of creation. And so this is a good thing. So I don't know that. I think that's probably enough for one day. Richard, you had a comment?
Yeah, hi, I'm gonna snitch on myself. Years ago, 30 years ago, I used to sell jewelry to, in Boca, in New York City, to boiler rooms. And that's where they sell stock, penny stocks and whatnot. And there wasn't anyone I'd really wanted to hang out with. I didn't like them, but I made a living selling them jewelry and watches. Well, what I'm saying here to do the comparison, my ego is also a boiler room. It's got to shut down. I'm selling stuff in my mind. My ego is creating a fictional character,
Mhm,
trying to sell these, myself,
mhm.
which is this boiler room in my head, figuratively speaking, has got to close down. And it's like, now the ego is like unemployed. Where do I go? Is there a place, a line, a soup line I can go to? Can I get Social Security or unemployment? And what I'm doing now, and and I'm being funny, of course, is the Holy Spirit saying, I got your back, man, don't worry.
There you go. And that
That's
is that. Thank you. That's a beautiful message. Holy Spirit's got your back. And so for those of you that have read the whole thing all the way through, you know that the Teacher's Manual, Volume 3, teaches that the number one characteristic of God's teachers is trust. It becomes the foundation for everything. And we're talking about this very process. Who are you going to trust? The ego would teach you to trust only yourself, which is to say, trust your own judgment. What we are going to learn is to trust the Holy Spirit, which is really a proxy for our higher self, for our soul. You trust the Spirit to guide you, not the self-talk that would have you stop, turn around, and go back. So that's all we're going to do tonight. We will, in the next section, go over the third lesson of the Holy Spirit, and then do a short review of all three of these lessons. The Course says these are foundational. It's my experience that after reading them the first few times, I really had no idea what it was all about. I'm being honest here. It was words that didn't have a lot of meaning to me, even though I could memorize the words. And then I started to have experiences doing the workbook lessons, and I could see after I had the experience how that was tied to these lessons. And so it started to, the veil of confusion and started to lift and became more and more clear. It opened my eyes that I might see through experiences in practicing these things. And so be gentle with yourself if all this is not perfectly clear in what it means to your own life. Be on the lookout as you go about practicing peace and giving all to all. Be on the lookout for how it relates to these lessons, and and trust the Holy Spirit has your back. I can't tell if people have their hands up. Susie, do you have a final comment?
I just want to say that in the beginning of the workbook, it says, just do the lessons. You don't have to believe them. You don't even have to believe they're true. Just do them. Just do them. Just do them. Just do them. And miraculous things will happen. And, you know, I just wanted to add, I remember saying to my sister, oh, but you don't understand my story, my story. You know what? You know, we all have this, we all have a story. It's just different. And it's just called the ego. And you know, and so it's just, I always thought, oh, mine was worse and yours was worse and hers was worse. And you know, we're not unique really. We all have this thing called the ego, right? And we're just trying to undo a faulty thought system and retrain our minds to think in a much different way. So workbook lessons, even if you don't believe them, I just did them and did them and did them. And yeah, a lot of trust. That's it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. All right, my friends. So stay tuned for lesson 3. And if you missed the previous lesson, these videos will be posted usually within an hour or 2 after class. And look forward to sharing step 3 with you real soon. Namaste.
Thank you
Thanks,
for reading,
Thank you
Julie.
so much.
Thanks,
Love you
everybody.
all.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody. Have a great week.
Peace and love.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Jonica.
Thank you, David.
Jonica, do you have any energy left for a question?
I do. I'm all energized.
Nice.
Let me turn record off here. Give me a moment here.